Well, just a moment ago, I said, how long is it going to take you to get to the place where your appointment is? And she said, oh, I don't know. I'd have to look at my maps. I said, okay. What's the address? I mean, do you remember the address? She said, no, I don't. It's a doctor's appointment. It's over in such and such an area. But I've already looked up the hospital and saved the address into my phone. It's in the maps. I'll just have to pull it up and look at the drive time. And so let me back up like 12 hours from right now. 12 hours ago, Karen and I had an invitation to go and have heavy hors d'oeuvres, kind of a dinner in the Tower Club in Dallas. And it was a really great opportunity for a character day. We met some people we hadn't met before and saw some old friends we hadn't seen in a while. And we had some time to spend with Ivor Chester and his wife, Christina. That was an awesome opportunity. Didn't get to sit at the same table with them, but we got to have a discussion. We met some new people around our table, like Peggy and Michelle and Kay and Tony and Tommy, and we had great conversation. We talked a lot about character and about leadership and what does it mean to have character and what does character look like. We got to see some people win awards, like Miss Tara, who won for her Inspire School Mentor Program. In fact, one of her mentees won an award, won a scholarship to go to school. So it's really kind of a cool event. We spent several hours with these people getting to know them, and then we left the Tower Club. Thank you, by the way, Cassandra Washington, for putting that event on. It was a great event. Thank you for having us. We got to see Jeff Klein and meet a lot of other new people. But as the event was winding down, we decided we would catch up with the Chesters, and we were going to go to Denny's. Great late night fare to have a cup of coffee and hang out for a bit. And we got to Denny's in Irving, and my wife says, will you go back to the truck and look for my phone? So I went back and I looked in all the usual places and I didn't find it. So what else do we do when you can't find your phone? You dial it, right? So I dialed her phone and we didn't see it light up anywhere, and we assumed it was still on vibrate because you wouldn't want it going off in the middle of the dinner, but didn't see it, didn't hear it, couldn't find it. I said, aha. We use a really cool program called Find My Phone. But Find My iPhone only works when you're logged into the same iTunes account. And since she decided to open her own iTunes account in order to have books and music downloaded that's different than mine, and then forgot her password, we were unable to use that fancy tool, which also means we can't make the siren go off or make it ring other than silent. So if someone has it in their pocket, or has locked it in a drawer, we wouldn't know that. There's no way to know where it's at. And once the battery dies, none of those features work. That was a little frustrating. Then I remembered we have this really cool app called Life 360 that we use to keep up with each other when we're at a mall or at SeaWorld or whatever. We can get within a few feet of each other at least. And so we activated that on her phone and we found it. Not where we were in Irving, but back in downtown Dallas. So we canceled our evening with our friends and we drove rather rapidly back into downtown Dallas. And this is where the fun adventure began. For what it's worth, the security forces at the Tower Club really aren't deeply invested in whether or not you lost your phone there. Nor do they have any protocol for something of high value being turned in. If someone turned it into security, then they might be able to tell you. But if they didn't, then sorry for your loss. That's kind of the attitude I got from a couple of the security guards. Now, one of them did look through the footage to see if he saw the phone left on a counter or a chair or a bench, or no luck. We looked through the security footage for the garage to see if we dropped it coming out of the elevator. No luck. And yet, the Life 360 kept saying that it was right there in like a 5-block area. It was moving though. And I thought, well, that's ironic because unless someone actually has taken it, it's really hard for it to move. They don't have legs. And so for roughly 3.5 hours, we tracked the cell phone around downtown Dallas. Now, my prompting question on the screen was, have you ever found yourself in that place where you have to make a sudden and quick decision? And the outcome of that decision could change everything. Well, there are a couple of decisions here that I want to juxtaposition. The decision to always have your phone on silent could prove complicated to find it if you were to misplace it. The decision to have a separate iTunes account and forget your password could prove disadvantageous to actually searching for your phone or activating the siren or letting someone else know that it's stolen so that they can't sell it for whatever. But there was another decision that we came to. See, we followed the tracker around town. We stopped and talked to several people that were security guards at the building or janitors at the building, and we went all over the building, back up to the Tower Club and all the way down into the basement, and we looked everywhere to see if the phone might still be in the building because the Live 360 kept saying it was within a certain area. In fact, there were times that our little circles overlapped. It was like we were standing next to each other in a crowd of people and we didn't know who had the phone. Well, at one point, about 1:15, we followed the phone away from the building several blocks. In fact, probably a mile or so. And we got within a few blocks of it and we saw it moving. And we passed by what we thought might be where the phone was located. And we saw a couple of questionable characters. One started chasing the truck. And so I made a quick corner and went around the block. And then I came back toward the same block because now it had reached a destination of sorts and it stopped moving. And so I sat there for probably half an hour watching the dot on the map not move. But then it moved. And it came, what looked like it was walking right by us. And as the dot passed in front of the truck, a young man passed in front of the truck. And I shouted to him, "Hey, can I have my phone back?" And he looked at me like I had asked him if he had Thanksgiving dressing in his bag. And he said, "Oh man, I don't have a phone." I said, "Well, my GPS," and I showed him my device, and I said, "Well, this says that my phone is moving, but when you stopped moving, it stopped moving." And ironically, it now says that we're standing in the same spot. And I just need to know if you have my wife's phone. He said, "Man, you're welcome to search everything I have, but I don't have a phone." And I thought, that's an interesting reaction because why would he even engage me? A homeless guy walking down the streets of Dallas at 1 o'clock in the morning. Why would he even answer me? And then I realized that the accusation made him cry. And so we chatted for a couple of minutes, and I said, either you're a very good actor or you have some integrity, because most guys, if they had the phone, would have just taken off running. The fact that you stopped and walked over to my truck at 1 o'clock in the morning to have a conversation with me tells me a little bit something different about you. So please accept my apology for the accusation, and I'd like to give you $20 for your evening and for your time and for your integrity. And so I gave him the $20, and he started to cry again, and he said, "God bless you." And he walked away. But the phone didn't move again. And so I continued to watch, and there were some interesting characters about half a block away. There was a car that had been sitting at the same stop sign almost as long as we'd been sitting there, and several people huddled around the car, and then finally the car drove away. And one of the guys who'd been standing there talking to the driver of the car kind of walked halfway across the street, then laid down in the street and started to flop around like a fish. That was a little odd, I thought. A little odd. I wasn't sure if he was acting or if there's something wrong with him, but then a couple of other guys gathered around him, and I wasn't going to hang out to find out. But I started to drive toward where the ping, the dot, the pointed arrow of my wife's phone said that it had been for several minutes and not moved. And I got to this really odd intersection that's kind of a Y and kind of an X, and two of the streets that come off of it are one way, and then there's a fifth street that, it's like a four-way, and then one other little street that kind of juts out to the right, and that was right where the ping was. It was probably not 50 yards from where we'd been sitting. I thought, well, I'll just drive by there, we'll dial the phone, we'll see if it lights up, we'll see what happens. Maybe somebody just dropped it and kept running. So I pulled across the intersection. I drove 50 or 60 feet, and when I turned right into this little road, I realized this road's probably only a couple of blocks long at this point. And between me and the other end, there are probably 50 people. Now, from where I am at 1 o'clock in the morning, the only light on any of them, tall buildings on one side, abandoned buildings on the other. The light coming from the other end just shows me an alleyway, if you will, of silhouettes. Some standing in the streets, some standing on the corner, some leaning against the building, some laying on the streets, perhaps sleeping there. And I thought to myself, if I was with a cop, or if I was with a teenage boy, or if I was with 10 or 12 teenage boys, I might have the audacity to get out of the vehicle and yell, "Where's my phone?" But knowing that my 5'6", 120-pound dripping wet wife was the only backup I had, and that should I go down or do wrong, she would be in immediate peril. Now, I don't know if these are 50 very friendly people who would love to embrace me and have a hug and sing Kumbaya and chat, or if these are 50 people who would love to steal my other cell phone. And so I had to make a decision. Often we talk about making decisions that are life and death, or decisions that could change everything, or decisions that could change the outcome of the future. And right there in that moment, with less than 10 feet of road behind me, a very strange intersection, cars coming very sparsely. Oh, we've been driving around downtown for 3.5 hours now, getting out of the car from time to time to chase down an alleyway and see if I might spot someone with the phone where the dot is going. And in this time, we have not seen one cop. So the thoughts going through my head were, are these guys friendly? Do they want to give the cell phone back? Will they apologize and say, "Thank you for coming to get it," and not making me bring it back to where I got it? Or is there a chance that we won't leave this little stretch of road alive? As men started to approach the truck, I found reverse. And in that moment, I made a value decision. Is the phone and the other electronics that I have in the car, is the car, is my life, is my wife's life worth an iPhone? It didn't take me long to answer that. In fact, you could have stripped it all away and asked the question, if there's any chance that harm could come to your wife, would you fight over that cell phone? And the answer is no. Not in a million years. I can replace that cell phone without even thinking twice. But then I thought, there was a moment when it seemed like that dot was in a bar right across the street from where we'd been all night, that I honestly pondered the notion of walking up to several people and going, "Hey, can I have my cell phone back? Hey, do you have my phone?" And you never know how that thing's going to end, right? You never know when you confront someone, especially if you're accusing them, even if it's by inference, how they're going to react to that. Maybe they've been accused of that kind of thing before. Maybe they're guilty of that thing. Maybe even one of those people who I looked in the eye while the phone was ringing against my head was letting it vibrate in their pocket, knowing that I was calling the phone they had stolen. Maybe. But at what point do you, in the old redneck vernacular, fish or cut bait? At what point do you just let it go and you realize, yeah, that's a very expensive device to be losing or giving away, and I'm still going to have to pay for it and at the same time replace it? Man, that's a big expense. But is it worth a life? I mean, I have a little bit of training in close quarter combat and hand-to-hand combat, and I can generally hold my own. But if somebody decided that that phone was worth fighting to the end of their own life for, would I want to be responsible for that? Would I really push it that far? See, that's the decision that I'm talking about. How often do we find ourselves in a place where we are making a decision that seems to us to be an important decision, and yet the nature of that decision, or even the outcome of the things that could come off, because every decision is like a spider web. It's not a straight line. It goes a little ways and then another decision happens, and then it goes a little ways and another decision happens, and then you come to that place where you have 15 different options. Maybe you've seen that flow chart that is it broken? If the answer is yes, get duct tape. If the answer is no, then save your duct tape. If the answer is yes, it's broken, you get the duct tape, then you ask the question again, is it still broken? And if the answer is no, then you're good to go. And if the answer is yes, then add more duct tape. That's not the kind of decision tree that I'm talking about. I'm talking about that one that says, will I pursue this phone? Will I chase it down? Will I spend 5 hours of my time hunting an electronic device? And what if I did find someone? Would I be like a dog chasing a car, just barking at the tire and then absolutely thoroughly confused if I found it? Possibly. But I do know this for certain. When I turned down that alleyway and I saw all those people, and I didn't know their intent, I didn't know their heart, I didn't have time to find out. Now, I don't want to think for a moment that I was judging them, that I was prejudging them, that I was casting aspersions toward them, whoever they are. They were all silhouettes to me. I don't know who they were. I don't know any of their names. I don't know their educational backgrounds. I don't know their race or their religion or their politics or their position of faith. I know nothing about them. They were silhouettes. They were shadowy figures in a dark alley. But the decision that I had to make in that moment is there any possession on this earth worth risking my actual life for, or the life of my wife? And I looked at her and I said, you're going to have to get a new phone. And we backed up and we headed for the highway. Disappointed? Yes. Frustrated with all the time that we searched? Oh yeah. Aggravated that we have this expensive device now to replace. Thank goodness it wasn't the iPhone X, right? You got to take out a mortgage on that thing. And yet, in the end, the device can be replaced. Now, I have to be honest and tell you, as much as I love my very intelligent and sweet and capable wife, she is sometimes directionally challenged. And that appointment at 8 o'clock this morning might be a hurdle for her, without her little manly Siri to tell her, turn left now. I'm not sure how she's going to get there. I'll have to draw a map for her with crayons so she can find the place. You ever find yourself in the place where you have to make a decision that literally could be a life or death decision? Maybe for you, maybe for someone around you, maybe for someone you care about, maybe for someone in the car next to you. How do you decide what takes precedence? What has more priority? What's more important right now? Tough choices. And remember, none of them are straight linear. None of them are just a single string. They're all decisions like cobwebs. They branch, they split, and they cause another set of occurrences. Now, let me throw one other strange option at you, because this is altogether possible. I don't know. I don't know how probable it is. I'm not a mathematician. But because of the way downtown is shaped, and because of the way the cell towers bounce off the various buildings, I know when we left the building the first time, before we realized the cell phone was missing, we pulled out of the parking garage, and I dislike downtown one-way streets and maps, and makes me frustrated. It doesn't matter what downtown it is. But I asked my wife to get us mapped out of here. So she pulled up the street address of where we were meeting our friends, and she punched it in. And so I pulled out of the garage, and I followed the first set of instructions that were, this is a one-way street, you can only go one direction. And so I followed that direction until the light turned red, and I stopped at the light. And on my own phone, my own GPS, trying to use Siri and the cell towers to get me out of downtown, couldn't figure out that I'd left the parking garage. And when I was at the light, 100 yards away, it didn't know that I had already made the turn. It was telling me to turn. My little GPS thing wasn't moving at all. And then when I made the turn, it finally caught up to the fact that I left the parking garage. So for the first 4 or 5 turns, we were kind of winging it, following the blue line, but our little arrow wasn't going there too. It's altogether possible that the towers that we've been pinging off of this cell phone, which no one has turned off, no one has answered. It appears to have moved all over the city, but never left more than a 5-block radius. That someone found it and dropped it in a locked drawer, waiting for us to call them and go, hey, did you find a phone? And it could be sitting in a locked file cabinet somewhere at the top of the Tower Club. And that's what I'm holding out hope for. So if you're praying someone, please pray that that very expensive device will be found sometime today in the course of business, and that our decision to drive down that street and accuse 50 odd people in the dark of having taken it was a good decision that we didn't do that. I think either way, phone gone or not, that was a good decision. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.